All right, guys, welcome in. I'm gonna do my first reaction video. I've been a huge Mad Season Show fan for a long time. I started watching him when he had about 20,000 subscribers. Really liked the guy's content. This video really stood out to me because I agree with a lot of what he says, but I think he really missed the point on a few things. So what I would like to do is I'd like to kind of go through. I'm going to add in some commentary and stuff on this, but yeah, I'd like to watch it together. So I guess let's just get into it.
When discussing toxic communities, there are a handful of games out there that immediately come to mind. League of Legends is almost universally recognized for its intense and sometimes hostile player base. It's
Never really
the
played League
competition
much.
is fierce and the stakes feel high, leading to interactions that are often less than friendly. Call of Duty,
Wait,
that
hold
are
on.
often
What did that say?
less than
Jesus. Okay, so I haven't played League that much. I played some with like my younger brother and stuff, but that's pretty funny. I didn't realize it was that toxic.
friendly. Call of Duty, another giant in the gaming world, is known for its cutthroat nature. It's a game where players are often pitted against one another in highly competitive environments, and
All right, yeah, but is it that toxic or is it just people talking crap? Because I there was like some crap talking back in the day for WoW PvP too. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if it was necessarily that toxic. At least not when I played. But again, I wasn't the biggest Call of Duty fan.
this too can lead to toxicity. And Counter-Strike, with its emphasis on precision and skill, has a community that can be quite unforgiving to newcomers or
That I do
those
agree with.
perceived as less skilled. And then there's World of Warcraft, a game that's been around for nearly 2 decades with a community that's seen its fair share of ups and downs. You'll find many websites that list these games as having toxic communities, but they often move on without much explanation. The goal of this video today is to go beyond the surface and to really explore and answer this question. Why is World of Warcraft considered toxic? What is it about this game that's cultivated such a reputation over its near 20-year legacy?
So I loved the first 3 Star Wars, especially as a kid. Like, I loved those movies. I did go watch 1, 2, and 3 in the theaters, and they were okay. They were not bad, but when you look at like the most recent ones, I'm just gonna be honest. I thought they were terrible. Well, I guess that's not fair because I didn't watch the last couple. I watched. Oh, what was it? It was the one with Daisy Ridley in it. I don't really even remember what it's called. It had that little impact on me. But yeah, I was like, yeah, this isn't really that good. It's okay, I guess, but it's not really that good. But,
The
my fan
releases
base is
in the
dedicated, man.
entertainment world are exhilarating. There's a certain magic to them, almost an addictive quality that pulls you in and keeps you engaged.
Wait, there was actually a Skyrim midnight release? I didn't know that. Yeah, I guess Elder Scrolls fans are like that
Getting
too.
caught up in the frenzy of a new phenomenon, whether it's a movie, TV show, or video game, is an experience like none other. It's as if you're being whisked away to this new world,
That's funny.
a new experience that feels fresh and exciting. The story progresses, new features are introduced, and mysteries that have been lingering on for years might finally be resolved. The fan base collectively gets lost in the unfolding narrative, sharing in the excitement and the joy of discovery. And it's this communal experience is what makes these releases so special. But do you know what's also
Yep, sorry, Mad Season. First off, I'm going to skip this, but yeah, I actually remember I took part in the midnight release for Burning Crusade, and I took part in the midnight release for Wrath of the Lich King. Both were pretty fantastic. I had a great time. It's funny because like I'm not from like a huge town either, so I remember going there and standing in line and being like, man, there's like got to be 100 people in this like town of like 50-60,000 people. Like that's a lot of people here. So yeah, actually I remember that pretty distinctly. It's a lot of fun.
So special, the when world something 5.0% leaves you with design. Trip pack also comes. There are essential boxers to organize them, and anyway, the MMO. Few categories of entertainment deliver this feeling more intensely than the MMORPG. Not
classic.
The I'm talking about the excitement over this new experience. It is a genre where the allure lies in an online world that isn't just yours, but is shared with countless others from across the globe. The world is...
Well, that's the thing, too, is like, one of the best ways I ever heard it put was, back in, vanilla days, the world was the main character. You were just kind of a player in it. And so, like, that's why I think back at when you look back at the, like the first few years of the game especially, but probably, I would say up until about Wrath launched for me personally, the world was definitely bigger than you. It felt so expansive, so big and stuff. And it's, I'm sure some of it was because it was new. WoW was my first MMO I ever played. But, yeah, I definitely remember that feeling of, like, this place is massive. Like, there's so much to do. There's so much to learn. There's so much to this game. So, yeah, definitely the world was what made it what it was. And the community was, back in those days, for me, was amazing.
Is persistent. It's always alive with things happening in every corner, even when you're not logged in. It is this virtual reality that continues to exist and evolve even when you're not present. For some, it even becomes a second life, a place where they can escape from the stresses of the real world and immerse themselves in an alternate reality.
400 hours played on pretty much all my characters combined. I think that's probably what I'm at now. I actually checked my warrior earlier today to see, and my main, which was my warrior alone, is 351 days played. Not hours, days played. That's insane. Like, literally in 24 years, I've put over a year worth of game time in it. So that's just absolutely insane.
Much like other forms of entertainment, the initial period after an MMO's release is dominated by the desire to experience the game rather than to achieve specific goals. This period is defined by what is called free play as opposed to instrumental play. In 1993, a German educational theorist and psychologist, Wolfgang Iser, contributed to the understanding of these types of play within the context of child development and educational theory. He described free play as the most natural and uninhibited form of play. It's spontaneous, unstructured, and self-directed, driven by curiosity and imagination. There are no rules or objectives imposed by others. Only intrinsic motivation guides the activity. For instance,
which is that's how a lot of vanilla was. There was always like clear set objectives of what you had to do, and you needed to rely on other players. But like there was no like set like this is how you have to play, this is how you have to level. In fact, I actually remember my warrior, which my first character I leveled. I actually leveled him as protection. And I done because I think some of it was A, I didn't know better, but B, I just was like obsessed at that time. I'd always played like Final Fantasy is a good example. So when I played that back in the day, I would always like I really liked the fighter class, and I would always try to give him a shield and just like beef him up as much as I can with heavy armor because I was like obsessed with them taking as minimal damage as possible. And there were times where I'd like wipe, the whole group would wipe, and I'm like, well, I can pretty much finish this dungeon by myself. My healer died, and my white mage died, my black mage died, and whatever else I was playing. But I was like, I can pretty much solo the rest of this on my warrior just with some healing potions because he just takes so little damage, because even when you're fighting a boss, it hits you for like 4 damage. So yeah, I mean, I always kind of like that. But yeah, I leveled this prot and it was fine. I think I switched around like level 40, 45, something like that, because then at that point it started to take too long. And I think I went arms or something like that. But yeah, there was no set like on like this is how you have to level, this is what you have to do, this is how you have to play.
A child building a fort out of cushions and blankets isn't doing so with a specific goal in mind. There's no reward waiting at the end. The child is simply exploring, creating and having fun and lost in the joy of the moment.
Well, that's not necessarily true either, though, because the objective is the fort. You know, the objective is the fort. You know, kind of like in World of Warcraft, like the objective is in-game. You know, there still were, I don't know if I necessarily agree with him there. There was always like a structure of like, you know, where you're supposed to go. But I sort of get
Instrumental play, on the other hand, is structured and goal-oriented. It often comes with external instructions or objectives with a clear end goal in sight, and while it can still be enjoyable, the focus shifts towards achieving a particular result, such as a classroom activity where children are tasked with solving a puzzle. The aim is to complete the puzzle correctly, which usually involves following rules and employing logic. So whereas the satisfaction from free play comes from...
So I like the fact that he used Legos as that demonstration there too. So here's the thing is you can play with Legos, and we all did, right? You get, I don't know, a lot of times, maybe not like when I was really young, but I know at a certain point they started coming out with like the Lego packs where there was like actual like objectives of like you're supposed to build a spaceship or whatever like that. But you could always play with the other parts too. You could add on to it and stuff. So, you know, it's interesting that they use Legos for their, objective, but you could still free play all you want with Legos.
Participating in the activity itself. In instrumental play, it most often comes from the sense of accomplishment that follows achieving this specific goal. Free play is seen as crucial for holistic development. It fosters creativity, problem solving, and social skills. When left to their own devices, individuals can create these entire worlds and characters and stories, and in the case of World of Warcraft, this type of play is most often seen in the world of role-playing, where players immerse themselves in the lore, and they create their own narratives within the game's universe. In this sense, they're not just playing the game, they're living in it, and creating their own stories and adventures as they go along. Instrumental play, on the other hand, while different, is equally valuable. It helps develop specific skill sets, and it fosters critical thinking. Following rules and working towards a goal and focusing on achieving a particular outcome requires discipline, focus, and perseverance.
Hell yeah!
Let's go!
Yeah, nice shit.
I still remember that. I still remember some of the big achievements. I remember my first Molten Core. I remember my first Ragnaros kill, rather. It was such a good feeling because we had wiped on him, and we'd progressively gotten better. And we'd been able to get to him, but I think it probably realistically took us a solid month to actually kill him. Like, we weren't that great of a guild, but it was a big thing. And I remember just kind of being on cloud nine and, you know, seeing people get their gear and stuff. Nothing good dropped for me that run. I distinctly remember that, but yeah, it was so much fun, man. Those achievements, that was what really, you know, for me, watching my friends get stuff, that's what kind of made it worth it.
Skills are crucial both in real life and in these virtual worlds that we inhabit. And in World of Warcraft, an example of instrumental play would be raiding, where players work together to overcome difficult challenges requiring coordination, strategy, and a deep understanding of the game's mechanics. During the birth of a new movie series or video game or fandom of any sort, exploration and curiosity often overshadow this objective-based play. In other words, free play takes precedence over instrumental play. This is a very natural progression, as the initial thrill lies in the discovery.
Well, and there's some truth to that too, because, you know, going back all the way to, you know, classic to vanilla, you know, there was like a lot of people would do things just to do things, right? You know, you're like, I remember at one point I just would grind reputations for no real reason other than it's just something to do, and I'll kind of complete them. So yeah, I think there is some truth to that too, but that was, to me, kind of where I think I had the most fun, was like there was no like structure, just kind of did things to do things.
And the novelty of the experience rather than achieving specific outcomes. It's a time when the world feels open and full of possibilities, and where the joy comes from the journey rather than the destination. Although both types of play are essential, free play has an advantage, especially in terms of community dynamics. It's less intense because there are no objectives at stake.
Yeah, but there are objectives, even going all the way back. You know, I remember I was a little bit of a late arrival when I started playing WoW. Like I kind of missed the first little bit when it launched, but I remember seeing like higher levels and stuff like that with gear, and it was like holy crap, because there was like there was no such thing as like Atlas loot or anything, so you kind of didn't know like what you were going to get out of dungeons. But I remember I was probably like level 30, and I remember seeing like somebody that had some of like the in dungeon gear, or especially like when I went out to Arathi base, and I remember going out to Arathi, or sorry, not Arathi base, but Arathi Highlands, and seeing like the purple shoulders from the PvP vendor out there, and just being like, holy crap, that has to be the best item in the game. That is so insane. Like I didn't know what purple meant. I just looked at the stats, and I compared it with my 4 stam, 4 strength shoulders I currently had at 30 or whatever it was, and then looked at this purple set that had like 4 times that plus agility. It's like, this is insane. Like that has to be one of the best items in the game. So
without specific goals, the game lacks a competitive edge, which can lead to a more relaxed and welcoming environment. But as time passes and this initial exploration phase ends, the free play dynamic wanes, and objective-based play and consequently instrumental play start to take over. Where there once were no conditions to win, the need to achieve victory at all costs begins to dominate. The fun is no longer about simply experiencing the dungeon, it's about completing it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. The shift.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily true too. Because, I remember, I'm trying to think of specific examples, but in like Burning Crusade's probably the best one, so like in vanilla, we brought a lot of players along that weren't maybe the best players, and I'm not like, Rockstar myself. I've never been like, top tier talent. There's a lot of people that are, more talented than me. But I remember we would bring people along that were just really awesome players that we enjoyed playing with, that were really fun and stuff like that, just because they were there and we liked playing with them. And, even in Burning Crusade, we tried to keep those people around. We would go play with like, some people that like maybe weren't that great. We would take them through like Karazhan and stuff like that. I remember distinctly at some points, like I would heal, and my friend who played a paladin tank, he would kind of run through and, blast through a lot of these like raids and stuff, these lower level raids and stuff like that. And then kind of when that died out and those players didn't really want to do that stuff anymore, and nobody wanted to run on their alts, I would just go join a lot of times on my tank, who by that time was, mostly like tier 6, and I would just like knuckle drag these like just random like groups through, or I would go find like these guilds that were full of just really nice people, and I'd just go tank for them, or I'd go heal for them or whatever, because I'm like, yeah, I got nothing to do on a Saturday night or whatever. So
Shift introduces a level of pressure to perform well, and often to impose that same pressure onto teammates. And it's no longer just about enjoying the game, it's about proving your worth, both to yourself and to others.
Yeah, but again, the only time that was annoying is if you had a really, 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 really bad player that just could not get the hang of mechanics, and then it was like, yeah, sorry, dude, like I got 24 other people to think about. I can't just bring you along for this raid, but we'll still bring you along to some of the easier stuff, and you can come on alt runs. But like if you just couldn't get the hang of things, like, that was, I think, the only time at a certain point where it was like, yeah, I can't bring you along. Like you've watched videos, I've tried to work with you, but we would usually try to like coach those players along. So yeah, no, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Don't go in the defile. Get out of that defile.
Kidding me?
Come on! Wow.
Yep, that right there. You just wiped the group. You wipe the group over and over and over again. It's like, okay, now I really can't bring you, man. Like you can probably come up till this point, like, we'll have like, somebody who needs absolutely nothing out of these dungeons and out of this raid anymore. Like just wait around or show up like 2 hours late or whatever, and you can come along as like a more casual player until we get up to that point. But then I gotta kick you out because we gotta get a Lich King down tonight.
It is at this point that elitism begins to creep in. Those who don't meet certain standards can be excluded or looked down upon.
So this right here. So this is one of the things that I kind of want to talk about. So this type of behavior, this is not like your typical hardcore players. And I don't think he's necessarily trying to say that, but this is something that I've noticed. Like those back in like vanilla, like there was two things. Like you could kind of be an asshole, but you had to be good. But if you were an asshole and you were bad, I probably wasn't gonna play with you very much. Like I would just stop. I wouldn't bring you to raids and stuff like that. But rarely did I see this type of behavior out of like the hardcore raiders. This, and this is going to be a very unpopular opinion. This type of behavior right here was the I don't know how to really describe it other than just say like these are the type of players that were never really good enough to get into an in-game raiding guild, but wanted to. And you guys probably remember if you've played a long time, you always had that group of people that they would be in a guild with like 3 other people because they, I don't know, had no social skills or whatever like that. I mean, they were just kind of like, they were usually bad and they were a jerk. And so like you got that combination of like I'm not gonna bring you along, man, because you're like, yeah, you're just a jerk. This was always the type of player that just they weren't a very good player, but they wanted to be, and they were kind of like angry at the world because they weren't being taken into like an in-game guild. I don't know how else to describe it. That I almost never saw this type of behavior out of Raiders. It was that like more casual but didn't want to be casual player. Just nobody would bring them along to a raid team.
Creating an environment that becomes increasingly divisive, and what was once a collaborative and inclusive experience has now turned into a competitive and exclusionary one. Players who were once welcomed with open arms may find themselves now ostracized or criticized for not meeting the ever-increasing demands of the game and its player base. While game developers don't...
Okay, so hot take. The WoW community is trash to anyone who's not a veteran. Okay, so to piggyback off of what I just said, this is one of the things that I feel like he kind of failed to mention here. That it's not... Let me think how to say this. It's one of those things where the type of players that play now, I've seen this type of toxicity recently because you've pushed out more of your traditional hardcore players that want to work for things and stuff like that. And it's the quick, the younger generation of like quick loot, gimme, now. It's all about me, very solipsistic. And mostly where that comes from is a lot of these players used to have to self-police. Because again, kind of, again, to go back to what I was saying, if you have these players that are just like jerks, but they suck, people will stop bringing them. But now, that type of person, it doesn't matter if they... I understand there's personal loot now, but it doesn't matter if they ninja, it doesn't matter what they do, it doesn't matter how much of a jerk they are, they're still going to basically get whatever the hell they want. And I started seeing this really develop in Wrath of the Lich King for me. That was when I started being like, man, these people are just jerks. And at that time I thought necessarily, I was like, well, maybe it's just because, the game's been out for 6 years and there's an expectation of people to be better at the game now. But then like the more I kind of watched it, I'm like, yeah, but these people aren't better at this game. I literally just watched this hunter die 4 times by standing in fire. I've done it. Like I'm, again, I'm not like a top, shelf player. Like I'm pretty average, but like, I'm not bad either. I don't usually make the same mistake multiple times. But I would watch this guy just, get, train wrecked because he just wouldn't move out of fire. And I'm sitting there spam healing him as much as I can. And then it was like, what the hell, healer? It's like, dude, it's not my fault you stood in that. So those players used to a lot of like kind of self-police because if they were bad and they were a jerk, people just wouldn't take them. But now, especially as the game is now in its space, like I can't stop you. Like I can't kick you out of a group. I can't, stop bringing you. I don't mind like if you're kind of bad, like I'll kind of like coach you through it and stuff like that. I've always been like that. But there is nothing you can do to stop me from getting gear. So it doesn't matter if I ninja, it doesn't matter if I wipe the group 20 times. It doesn't matter if I talk crap the whole time. It doesn't matter, talk about the mage that, I bow pull and you crank up a pyroblast back in the day, I would usually give you like one warning, like, hey, don't do that for me. If you did it again, I'd probably kicking you. And those type of players are the same ones now that do that type of stuff, that type of really toxic talk. So I think that's a really big miss for him, is the aspect of the reason that people are like this now is because they can be. And there's nothing anybody can do to stop them from getting gear. They'll just solo everything right now.
Don't directly control player behavior. They do largely guide it. As the game becomes more and more solved and the collective interest of the player base shifts towards goal-oriented instrumental play, developers may start implementing systems and features that cater to this new focus. The quality of a player's gear becomes immediately discernible and boiled down to a number, and metrics like what dungeons or raids they've completed and how efficiently they've done so are now built into the game.
See, and that was, again, Wrath of the Lich King. Yeah, that's when the item level started being, and it started becoming a problem that I noticed where I'm like, I'd be playing on an alt, and I would be like pre-raid best in slot, and I would try to join these pugs, and they're like, sorry, you need, I don't remember the levels. We need 4,000 item level. I'm like, wait, but this raid drops 3,000 item level. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, we'll only bring you into a raid if you don't need anything. And it's like, well, then what the hell's the point of going? Like, I could show you my main. Like, trust me, I've cleared Naxxramas 150 times. So what is the point? Like, if I can't get any of the gear. I remember that only happened to me, I think, probably one or two times back in the day. And I was leveling a druid healer. And he was, at that time, was 1,800 bonus healing. And the group told me, sorry, you're not geared enough for Karazhan. And I'm like, well, I'm already 2-piece tier 4. There's literally only one other thing I need out of there. Which I think at that time was, I think I was going after the staff or whatnot, off of Nightbane, I think is what it was. I'm pretty sure it was Nightbane. Anyways, so, that's when I started noticing that, and I was like, what the hell? This is really a thing? So, that was the only time I experienced that in Burning Crusade, but yeah, Wrath of the Lich King, it started becoming much and much more rampant, because again, the game became easier and, like I've said before, much more accessible.
This creates an environment that allows for the immediate filtering of the good players from the bad and the optimal from the suboptimal, and where you once might have taken a player.
But it's not that. It's the game is so accessible now that, yeah, people are going to be overly picky because, it has nothing to do with the character skill. It has everything to do with what stats they have on paper or what they bring to the game.
Along a dungeon run because they were funny or enjoyable to be around, you now might replace that same player with a personality of Darkside Phil, who does 20% more damage. And though min-max and optimized objective-based gameplay can be fun in its own right, the focus begins to shift towards it in almost every aspect of the game.
Okay, I want to
Darkside Phil,
I want to go back to that real quick.
Who does 20% more damage. And though min-max and...
So, if you look at this, looking up here, a top shelf warrior would do that much, but that gap is not exactly that huge for most of these players. And yeah, I'm sure that some human nature would be to just try to bring on 10 warriors or whatever. And I did see that a little bit in Classic relaunch, where there was just a metric ton of warriors because they were, by a wide margin, the top DPS class. But I'm going to be honest with you, that, with the exception of maybe the druid to the warrior is pretty pronounced. But for most of these classes, I'm sorry, but if you're a fire mage, but you prefer to play a frost mage, that's not that big of a gap. And I mean, maybe in mythic difficulties, it might be a little different. I'm not sure. I haven't run a ton of mythics, but yeah, I gotta be honest. I think that most of these numbers would be just fine. I think it's just people looking for an easier ride.
And optimized objective-based gameplay can be fun in its own right. The focus begins to shift towards it in almost every aspect of the game, often at the expense of the community spirit that once defined it. such is the natural course of all multiplayer games, because the problem lies not necessarily with their design as much as it does with our competitive human nature. Yes! 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 Game designers can take measures to slow this process, and there have been documented cases of them doing so, such as in Final Fantasy XIV, another MMO, where damage meters are allowed only for personal use and are against the game's terms of service to broadcast them to other players. Or
I didn't know that either. That's really interesting. I mean, they're not bad or whatever. I mean, they can be a useful tool. Because, like I said, you know, when I would raid lead, if I would look at logs, I would look at stuff like that. You know, when it got to the point of like parsing and stuff like that, you know, that I'm like, this is dumb. Like, I'm not doing this. But like, you know, even like when Classic relaunched and then Burning Crusade came around, we would upload logs and we would look at it. So, but it was never like if you don't shape up, you're out of here. It was, well, let's see what this player's doing. Let's make sure they're kind of carrying their weight, and then let's also make sure that like, is there something we can do to kind of coach this player along? It's like, hey, your DPS is pretty bad. Let's see if we can get that up. So it wasn't like necessarily like a toxicity thing. It was just like a useful tool.
shame someone for performing suboptimally. Where there are choices, there are those that are right and those that are wrong. If there is a win condition, it is possible to lose, and the foundation of World of Warcraft in particular is built upon these fundamentals: player agency and achievements. Even if it isn't directly, the players are competing against one another in some way. Who has the best gear? Who does the most damage? Who has the highest parse? Who has more mounts? Who has the coolest mount? Who has this cool looking rare armor set? Who has more gold? Who has more achievement points? Max level characters, PvP ranking, and so on and so forth. Your performance in the game is directly compared to others playing it. It is an environment crafted specifically for instrumental play and for all of its strengths. A wholesome.
See what I mean about the gear quality? That's what I was talking about with the what was it called? The item levels. Yeah, that was probably one of the worst things that was ever. That should have been probably banned, to be completely honest with you. I do understand like the necessity to like make sure somebody is like capable of actually going into a dungeon, but you can usually like look at their gear. You know, before that existed, we would just go look at them and be like, "Let me see your gear." Like, dude, you're in full blue PvP set. You're not going to be able to go through this raid. You're just not geared enough for it.
Some community is transitory, existing only for a brief period of time when it is new and the players are preoccupied with experiencing it rather than experiencing it correctly. Such is the fate of not only World of Warcraft, but of most MMORPGs and, by extension, most multiplayer games. The answer to why the World of Warcraft community has become toxic, at least in part, lies in the passage of time.
Yeah, but again, it's because they can be. It's because they can be. Like, you're not relying on anybody else for the most part. You can pretty much just, you know, do whatever you want, be as big of a jerk. So... Is that a real reaction? I kind of want to know. That's actually kind of funny. What is this, Dragonflight, I'm guessing?
In all forms of entertainment, not just MMOs, and not even just video games, there's a certain measure of investment that comes from three key resources: money, time, and emotion. These three elements are the foundation of our engagement with the things that we love, and they play a significant role in shaping our experiences and our communities. You pay your hard-earned money to play the game, to watch the movie, to attend a sporting event, and you spend your valuable time interacting with it, investing countless hours into whatever form of entertainment that you're passionate about. And over time, if you enjoy it enough, you might even become emotionally attached to it in some significant way. And it's this emotional investment is what most often makes these experiences meaningful and memorable. But it can also be the source of conflict and tension within communities. Time and money are straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good point. I'm sure there is like an ego investment, especially to somebody that has pretty much continuously played for like 25 years, you know. So I suppose that's a fair point. That's something I was gonna say, but I kind of trailed off.
You spend them, and they're gone. But emotion is where things get more complicated. Most of us are guilty of reminiscing fondly about that nostalgic game series from our childhoods, or that unforgettable football game we attended, or maybe perhaps when we first saw Star Wars on the big screen. These experiences evoke strong emotional responses, and we carry them with us long after the event has passed.
Yeah, but is that, or is it you know, better? Because again, like I said, you know, like some games haven't aged well, but I'm like, oh yeah, like Fallout 3. It was probably one of my top 5 games I ever played. Really love Fallout 3. Played it later, and I'm like, wow, this did not age well. The graphics did not really hold up. There's a lot of like janky, you know, bugs and stuff to it. But, you know, I'm also going to be honest that, like I said, you know, I really enjoyed probably the first, you know, at least 4 years that I played WoW, you know, vanilla all the way through Burning Crusade. You know, I really did enjoy that type of game. And, you know, as the game progressed on, and it kind of got away farther from the original formula. Now, I will say I did enjoy Cataclysm when it first launched. I really liked that difficulty back. I was like, this is great, man. I really am enjoying this. But, you know, as it went on, I started kind of being like, man, I really don't like this. And that's why I kind of started getting frustrated when, the whole, you think you want this back, but you don't happened. Well, when I relaunched Classic for the first time and not playing it in, you know, what, at least a decade, you know, I was like, this is great, man. You know, I was able to make like some really long-term friends. I still have 2 friends that I met back in vanilla that I still talk to on the phone at least once a month or twice a month, and just, you know, they're still 2 of my best friends, you know. And when Classic relaunched, I made a few more friends that I still am. I'm on Discord, I'm on Facebook, and I chat with them and stuff, and I just had so much fun with the game. So like to me, I understand that like not everybody feels this way, but to me, there is something to that formula that is very attractive. Like, I really like the social aspect. I really like the camaraderie. I really like the interdependence on other players. To me, like, I really feel like that's a really good thing about the game. So it's not just a nostalgia feeling. In my opinion, it is better. You know, it is better. I mean, versus a game now, because like I said, I've been playing The War Within, and I gotta be honest, like, it's terrible. Like, it's like you can do almost everything in the game solo. Like, I could never set foot in a raid and still have a very respectable item level because I can just keep doing stuff. I can get almost probably, like, I never really looked into it too much, but I'm sure I could get almost on par with, you know, some of the mythic dungeon gears, or, you know, I could go through full mythic dungeons and probably get, you know, close to as par as, like, or on par with raids. So at that point, it's like, well, what's the point in doing it? You know, especially when the fact of, like, you know, you can literally run normal dungeons now with just NPCs. And it's like, you know, I don't know if that's a reaction to the toxicity that they're talking about or what, but I will say, I'm like, what is the point in this? Like, I'm going to do a 2-man dungeon with Bran's Broadsbeard, and then I could just run normal dungeons with NPCs. So, like, what's the point in having other people here? It's like the worst single-player game ever made.
They become a part of who we are, and they help shape our identities and relationships with others. MMOs, however, are a unique case. They are a particularly hardcore genre of game in terms of investment. They're expensive, requiring expansions every couple of years. World of Warcraft, for instance, still has a monthly subscription fee just to play, on top of a pretty intense cash.
It's pretty amazing to me that it's still only $15 a month. Like, back in the day, that was like the most affordable hobby I had, was actually just, you know, playing WoW, because I'm like, well, I don't have a ton of money, so my internet bill's like $39 or whatever it was, and WoW's $15. So, like, name something else I could do, you know, for $50 a month. I can go out to the bar and have some drinks with my friends, but that's going to cost me probably $50 for that one night. Or I can just, you know, basically, like, play this game and get like a full month's of enjoyment out of it for the same price.
Shop for cosmetics and progression. Told you so, by the way. It's a financial commitment that not every gamer is willing or able to make, but for those who do, it's a significant investment.
Wow, Wow, $4,120 for the game, all the expansions, and 238 months at $15. But that seems like a lot. But you got to remember that's over 24 years.
Meant the genre is also incredibly time-consuming. MMOs are built on the foundation that there is no end, that the content is continuously added in order to keep players engaged and, more importantly, subscribed. World of Warcraft, for example, just released its 10th expansion and will be celebrating its 20th anniversary this November. Some players have been playing it for the entirety of the game's lifespan, dedicating years of their lives and thousands of dollars to exploring Azeroth and all it has to offer. 20 years.
Yeah, see, I haven't played in the last 8 years, but I actually checked before I made this video just to make sure. So my main character, which is my warrior, I have 351 days played. Days, not hours, days played. That's a lot of investment. I also I would say every other character combined, I have at least 400 total at minimum. I didn't check that far in, but that's a lot of playing. I mean, you figure 20 years, and I have that many days played in 20 years, so I have over a year worth of playtime in one game. So
years of memories, trials, tribulations, successes, failures, friends, enemies, and emotional investment. For many, World of Warcraft has become more than just a game. It's a comfort activity, a consistent and everyday part of their lives that provides a sense of stability in a world that is often unpredictable and chaotic. It's something that they can rely on. It's something that's been there through the good times and the bad, and this deep connection only strengthens their investment into the game. Time, money, and emotion. This intense investment creates...
See, and that's the tough thing is, like, I understand the argument of... like, well, we all pay the same amount, so we should all get to enjoy the game and stuff. But, one thing that I will say is... I remember, I didn't play a ton, but I remember in Mists of Pandaria, there was a bunch, like I was reading through the forums, and there was a bunch of people basically saying that, like, it's kind of bullcrap that people that, can play more than me can get nicer things than me. And it's like, well, no, it's not, man. I mean, if you work part-time and I work full-time, I'm going to make more money than you. That doesn't mean I should be taxed at a 50% rate to make sure that you and I make the same amount of money when I work more. Like that's kind of not fair. Like, and again, I understand that, like, there is probably some pushback of, like, people that just legitimately don't have time. But I think the thing that bugged me was that's when the game started becoming less about, I felt like it was less about, there should be more accessibility for me to play, and people that can play more shouldn't get more. And it's like, no, that's kind of a problem. So yeah, it's kind of a really big problem, and that kind of goes back to, again, like what I was saying earlier, is like, that there is a group of people that, like, they just literally, they don't want you to get more than them, and I'll just give you another example. So, like, around the time when Nostalrius got shut down, I remember reading on the forums also, it was about the time the petition started circulating and stuff like that. And I remember the forums, there was, like, a group of people that were talking about it, and there was, like, a couple people commenting that was like, Blizzard, if you give them this game that they want to play, I will quit the game. Like, do not give this to them or else. And it's like, why do you care? Like, and basically I kind of kept reading down that thread, and it was essentially like, well, if Classic comes out, these people will quit the game and they'll go, play this older version of the game, and I'll have nobody to play with. And it's like, no, like, you got to understand, like, the people that are wanting this, they're not playing the game anyways. But it was a self-centered moment of, like, don't give it to them, because then I'll have nobody to play with. And it's like, well, there's still tons of people that are going to play the modern game, but there's just a group that doesn't like the way the game plays now. So yeah, I found that interesting. That kind of made me, it triggered that in my brain, that I remember that being a thing of, like, don't give it to them because I don't want them to have fun.
An equally intense community where some players attach their identity to the game, while on the other hand, perhaps due to its addictive nature, have attached their identity to disliking it. As stated, MMOs are built upon the fundamental principle of change. New features, systems, classes, land masses, and so on are constantly introduced, removed, or otherwise altered for better or for worse. And
well, yeah, change happens too, but yeah, no, I gotta be honest. Yeah, so here's the thing, from my perspective at least, and this is again, it's something that I feel like he really should have touched on that he didn't. Is for a player like myself, I like the older way of doing things. I like it being a little bit slower. Like I said, there's a lot of players that are better than me, but you know what? There's not a lot of players that will outwork me. Like, I will watch a video 900 times if that's what it does for me to really get the hang of things. I will. I remember. I don't remember what they were called. You have to forgive me. I'm pretty sure they were the Librams, or I think is what they were. I don't remember what the enchants were called, but basically you can go through and you can go to like BRD and you can get like that helm enchant that gives you 100 health. 100 health in the grand scheme of things isn't a lot, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to go farm that 100 gold and buy all the reagents or whatever I need to go get that quest done. And I would go get those helm enchants. Because if you did the legs and the helmet, it was 200 more health, and it was like just made it that much easier for me to tank for my the rest of my team, or like an upgrade. It was like, well, this only gives me 2 more stamina for this upgrade, and yeah, maybe it's 1,000 gold or whatever it was. It was like, well, you know what? I'm just gonna farm, and it's gonna take me a week, but I'm gonna get this one upgrade because that's 20 health that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I enjoy that challenge of really kind of putting in the work to kind of get the reward. And it puts me in an awkward position because, again, with War Within, the whole game can just be done single player, and it's like, well, this is kind of boring. But then if you look on the other side, it's like with Season of Discovery, which had so much potential. Like, they of course took the easy way out and just basically put in a bunch of like filler content and stuff like that, and it's like, that's not really what I want either. Like, Season of Discovery just feels like it literally just feels like Wrath of the Lich King capped at level 60. It's like, yeah, this isn't really that fun. It's not fun to go through and just AoE down the entire dungeons and be through them in like 15 minutes and stuff. Yeah, it's more convenient, but that's not the whole point of Classic. It's like, well, I would love to play on a fresh 60 server, but they have like no interest in doing that, which kind of does irritate me a little bit, because it's like, I'll just use this as an example. Lord of the Rings Online, I actually looked at Steam before I made this video. There is still 6,000 current players, and they can keep the lights on for Lord of the Rings Online. So you're telling me when people, and that was the first question, if you remember, they asked this not that long ago and said, hey, is there any like thought to doing, when they were like, we're going to move forward to Cataclysm, people were like, well, I don't really like Cataclysm. Are you going to do any fresh vanilla servers? So they're like, no, not at this time. So the whole excuse of like, well, it's expensive to run those servers. Yeah, I'm sure it is, but there are still hundreds of thousands of people that would play on that. So maybe you don't have 10 of them, maybe you don't have 20 of them, but you already have a bunch of them that you have just kind of left open. And I think just a lot of people would really like a fresh, Classic server, me included, because like I said, for me, Season of Discovery just feels like pretty much more modern retail WoW. It's just like not as fun for me. I'd much rather start over at this point.
The result is a community that is often at odds with itself, divided between those who love the game and those who love to hate what it has become. In recent years, there's been a lot of negativity surrounding Blizzard, the developer for World of Warcraft. From laying off a record number of employees after a record-breaking fiscal financial quarter, to releasing unfinished games, facing human rights controversies, poor expansion releases, and even lawsuits, Blizzard has been thrust into a whirlwind of controversy. This has led to an abundance of criticism and negativity, with Blizzard becoming something of a punching bag for journalists and documentarians and the gaming community as a whole. And while much of it is deserved, this constant barrage of criticism has also created a bandwagon effect where much of this negativity surrounding the game and the developer is either overdone or done in bad faith. It has...
Well, but it's also, some of it's also done in good faith too, because it's like, you're not listening. You have a group of people, and at this point, like I said, for me personally, I would love to love the current iteration of the game. Like, I really would, but I don't. But then also, it's like, hey, can I have a version of the game I do want? I really, at this point, like, I would say it's probably in your best interest to just keep retail WoW for the people that enjoy retail WoW for what it is. But let's, again, be honest, it's not an MMO anymore. It's like the looter shooter version of an RPG. So it's like, that's not really a great thing for a lot of players and stuff like that too. So it's like, just run them in parallel, man. Just like, I don't know, just like to take a quick crack at it. It's like, I think that maybe, like the Season of Discovery could have gone very, very good. Like for me. And I understand, like, the original, like, Season of Mastery, where basically they did like two times XP and like double the gold rate or whatever, like that is like, I mean, it didn't do particularly well, but it was also going up against Burning Crusade, which a lot of people were kind of hyped for. But I think that, like, yes to the token system. So like if you go into Molten Core, I think that there should be like a prot set, a ret set, and a holy set for paladins. I think that would be a really good thing. I think you add in some base abilities and stuff like that to the game. So like, paladins obviously should get a taunt and stuff like that to make the game a little more appealing and stuff like that. But I feel like they kind of went overboard with it. I think that they should have fleshed out some of the zones. I think they took the easy route, which was like basically, here we're going to put in like this minimal content that you can now just repeatedly do with these incursions, because it makes it seem like the game is more fleshed out, even though it's really not fleshed out. I feel like they could have done so much more with that. I feel like, even things like, kind of an off-topic example is like, when they added welfare epics into Burning Crusade, like I hated that choice, because it's like what you've done is you've basically you've given people an easy out instead of giving them a better catch-up mechanic. So, like, if you were to, hypothetically, in that specific scenario, add, like, I think they were called commendations or whatever that they did in Mists of Pandaria. So when you're playing through an alt, you have a path to faster gear up. And I think at a certain point, too, with the Badges of Justice, I think there should have been, when you're running through heroic dungeons on an alt, at a certain point, I think that you should have got double badges. So like every, boss drops 2 badges and the final boss drops 4. I think with Karazhan even it should have been, and I think they actually, if I remember right, they did double it to like 2 badges for Karazhan. But I think you should have provided a better alternative, like, for getting loot and stuff like that. And I think that that's kind of the same problem with Season of Discovery. It's like, man, if you would have added things like those commendations and kind of a way to get like different alternatives to getting loot rather than just putting the minimal effort in, I think it would do so much better. But they've gotten so far away from the essence of Classic that, again, for a player like me, what am I supposed to play? Like, neither version of the game is scratching the itch. I don't want to play Cataclysm Classic because, quite frankly, I just don't enjoy it. This is when too much of the game has changed. So where do I go? So that's where I'm trying to go with this is, for the players, it's like, just provide the version of the game that they want to play. It's not that they're not, like, these criticisms are founded because you're not making the game that most people are asking you for. Like, just make that version of the game. It wouldn't take you that long. A year of effort and you could have a really, really good version of the game, but you took the easy way. And yeah, criticisms, if you're going to take an easy way, then criticism's fair game, man.
It's long since reached a point where there's now pushback with longtime fans of the game who have invested so much of themselves into it, fighting back with what they perceive as equally personal toxicity.
Right, because again, you're trying to create a version of the game where everybody will enjoy it, and much in the way, if you want pizza and I want ice cream and we try to put ice cream on top of pizza, it's just going to taste gross, and then neither of us are satisfied. So it might just be better if I eat ice cream and you eat pizza, and then we're both kind of happy, right? So again, create 2 versions of the game, leave it to one group that wants to play the game in the way it is, and then create another version of the game for the people that don't really want to play that style of game. Like, it should not cost you this much money when 95% of the game is there. It's just tweaks. You know, you put 10, 15 people on this and have it done in a year.
Defensiveness is understandable, but it also contributes to the toxic environment that has become synonymous with the game. This phenomenon isn't unique to World of Warcraft. It's true of any long-running game or series, but it's particularly pronounced in MMOs due to the intense time and financial commitments required. It's not just a random Call of Duty match. It's an adventure that spans decades for some players. There's so much more to attach yourself to in the MMO genre, which makes the community dynamics even more charged, and therefore the potential for toxicity even higher. And the result is a mix of toxic positivity and toxic negativity. The fanboys versus the haters. Those who treat the game like a girlfriend versus those who treat it like an ex-girlfriend. Meanwhile, a potential...
Yes, but again, you're not getting haters because they're of the way the game is. You're getting haters because you're also not releasing the version of the game that they want to play.
Potential new player who is ignorant of all of this looks on in confusion and embarrassment. World of Warcraft, League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike. These are games and franchises that have been around longer than some of you have been alive. They've become staples, comforts, and significant parts of the player base's identity. When you combine this with the shift from free play to instrumental play and the hyper-optimization and metagaming that follows, it creates an environment that many today consider to be toxic and unwelcoming. And while the nature and structure of these games plays a role, what's truly responsible for the decline in the quality of these communities is our competitive human nature and our tendency to invest too much of ourselves into our passions, whether that be movies, sports, TV shows, or video games like World of Warcraft. The problem is the same. It's not just about the games themselves, it's about how we as people interact with them and the communities that form around them.
Yeah, so good video. Like I said, I agree with about 75% of what he says there, but I want to kind of touch back on the main point of what I wanted to do on this is, like, you know, like I said, the issue really for me with a lot of this is you've kind of created like a scenario where it is the players, because there's no accountability, there's no self-policing, you know, everything has to kind of revolve around, like, you know, there's nothing you can do from stopping me getting loot. So that's kind of where a lot of this behavior comes, and I think that was a big miss for him. Love Mad Season's content, but that was something I kind of wanted to do because I wanted to touch on a few of these points. So what do you guys think? I mean, are you kind of enjoying the game the way it is now? I mean, do you agree with my points? Do you disagree with me? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for checking this video out. You guys have a great day. Goodbye.